They ambushed a human vessel expecting immediate surrender. What followed? The Malkresh Passage was a corridor for hunters who wanted invisibility. Narrow, dark, bordered by asteroid chains that made sensors stutter and comm systems lag. 8 light-years from the nearest major transit point. The Virath had used it before. They would use it again. 9 warships floated in silence, engines cold, weapons hot. They formed a geometric pattern that had never failed. Not once in 300 years. Not against any species. High Warlord Kessak stood at the tactical console of the Dominion's vanguard. His frame was 2.3 meters of charcoal skin and exoskeletal plates. Rank scars crossed his left shoulder in geometric patterns, each one marking a victory in formal combat. His 4 teal eyes fixed on the long-range scanner. The eyes narrowed. One vessel approached. Mid-class human carrier, built to haul supplies and smaller ships. The scanner read light weapons, crew approximately 300 to 400, speed unchanged, vector unchanged. No evasive maneuvers, no distress signals, no surrender demands sent before the Virath blockade became active. Kessak's thought, when prey walks into the open, it is always foolish, never bold. He turned to his second command. Officer Vothan stood at the secondary tactical station, scarred across the left temple from a training accident 2 decades prior. Vothan was tall even for Virath. His eyes were fixed on the same display. Formation, Kessak said. Full embrace, Vothan replied. Not a question. The sequence was known by repetition. Engines powered, shields charged, weapons cycled. Kessak had given the order to form final embrace 12 times in his career. He had destroyed 12 separate attempts at civilization-level resistance. The moment was inevitable. The 9 ships moved into position. 2 heavy-class warships, 4 mid-range combat vessels, 3 light attack ships. They compressed the passage. They cut retreat vectors. They left no gaps. On the bridge of the Dominion's vanguard, the crew waited. Communications Chief Vrel, older than Kessak's by 4 years, had sent 47 surrender demands in his career. He knew the tones that worked. He knew the languages that made the translated words carry the weight of certainty. He waited. Kessak's gripped the edge of the tactical console. His grip was hard. His 4 eyes did not blink. The human carrier continued forward at unchanged speed. It did not see the encirclement closing, or it saw and did not care. That was not possible. Kessak tapped the comm. Vrel opened a channel in 17 languages. The countdown began. 90 seconds. Surrender or be destroyed. The offer was standard. The outcome was not in question. On the Vanguard's shadow, the human carrier, Captain Mara Thex put her coffee cup down on the armrest of her command chair and looked at 9 red markers closing in on the tactical display. The crew around her did not panic. Engineering held their stations. Comms monitored the Virath demand. Weapons tracked the converging formation. The carrier's shields were stable. The reactor was holding. The systems were ready. Thex was in her 19th year commanding a starship. She had spent 14 months in a classified refit that had not been a refit at all. The Vanguard's shadow was not what the Virath scans saw. It was never what the scans saw. The countdown reached 30 seconds. Vyers, the tactical AI integrated into the ship's central nervous system, spoke in Thex's mind alone. Firing solutions locked. I calculated them 4 minutes and 27 seconds ago. The moment your order will arrive. All 3 flanking positions. Simultaneous. They will not be able to respond before we are moving. Thex nodded. Stand by, she said aloud. The crew had trained for this. Every person on the bridge had lived through a full scenario engagement that simulated exactly this moment. 9 warships, narrow corridor, no backup, no retreat possible. They had not panicked then. They would not panic now. The countdown reached 10 seconds. 5, 1. The demand ended. Vrel waited for the human response. "Give us a minute," Thex said, her voice calm and slightly tired, as if commenting on a routine repair. "We're finishing breakfast." On the Vanguard's bridge, silence held. Vathan was the first to speak. His tone was careful. "They are finishing breakfast, High Warlord." Kessex did not respond. His grip on the console edge did not change, but his four eyes narrowed to slits, not the narrow of focus, the narrow of confusion, the moment when a pattern begins to fail. For the first time in 27 years of command, the High Warlord felt something small and cold move through his chest. Not quite fear, not quite. Something like the moment before understanding breaks. He gripped the console harder. "Full tactical rescan," Kessex said. The results came back identical. One carrier, light weapons, crew 300 to 400, no hidden ships, no reinforcements, no weapons hidden in the asteroid field or elsewhere in the passage. The data was consistent. It was impossible. Kessex ran the scan again. Same result. The human ship continued toward the final embrace formation, as if the geometry of the passage, the very walls of the trap, was not reality. As if 9 warships closing on a target was an interesting puzzle to solve, rather than a fate to accept. Kessex thought of analyst Vyers. 3 weeks ago, she had submitted her threat assessment. She had recommended the humans be reclassified from moderate risk to something higher, something that had no category yet in Vyrath tactical doctrine. Kessex had dismissed her. "All mammals break," he had said. "We have engaged 14 mammalian species. Every single one capitulated." Vyers had pressed. She had offered research. She had mentioned the humans' 7,000-year history of warfare. She had described a neurological phenomenon. Under extreme stress, human neurology triggered focus rather than panic. Their adrenaline response was not flight or fight as a choice. It was fight and function. Their bodies had evolved on a world where extinction-level events were routine. Their ancestors had survived ice ages, asteroids, plagues. The human expectation was that they would take damage and continue anyway. Kessex had not wanted to hear it. He turned to Vathan. "The formation is secure." "Yes, High Warlord." "Order the opening of fire." The Dominion's Vanguard began to fire. Plasma and energy weapons converged on the human carrier from multiple vectors, 4 ships aiming at the same point. The math was simple. The shields should fail. The hull should breach. The crew should begin the process of surrender. On the human bridge, the tactical display showed incoming fire. Red lines converging. Real damage incoming. Real heat building across the shield envelope. "Hull panels opening," Thex said. The human carrier's external paneling retracted. Weapon arrays emerged. 4 rows of mass driver batteries. Each one prepositioned to hit the exact vector, where the Vyrath flanking ships had to be to maintain the encirclement geometry. 3 Vyrath ships took simultaneous strikes at their engine blocks. The strikes were precise. The targeting had been calculated. The energy was surgical, not overkill, not wasteful, exactly enough. 3 ships lost main propulsion. The encirclement broke. Kessex watched the tactical display. "Status," he said. 3 capital-class ships non-responsive, Vathan replied. His voice did not change. 6 ships remain operational. Kessex stared at the display. His 4 eyes had stopped narrowing. They had gone very still. Vyers spoke to Captain Thex. 4 minutes and 27 seconds ago, when you told me to calculate." Thex did not answer. She was already moving to the next phase. "Energy distribution to the rear shields," she said to her engineering chief, Tomas Ray. "Dorsal gets what the port section doesn't need. Run hot if you have to." Ray nodded. He did not ask why. The crew had trained for this scenario. The training was the binding that held every person to their station when panic would have been reasonable. Transferring power now, Ray said. The carrier's shields absorbed the next volley from the 4 remaining Virath ships. The hits came in. The shields held. The hull held. The carrier continued forward at the same speed, the same vector. Kessax ordered return fire. The 6 operational Virath vessels concentrated on a single point of the human carrier's shield envelope. They were trying to overload one section, to break through, to end this with overwhelming force applied to a single vector. The human ship was still moving forward. 2 mid-range vessels hit, Vathan reported. One has lost weapon array, one has lost bridge crew. 5 Virath ships now carried critical damage. Kessax stared at the tactical display. The corridor was beginning to narrow as the formation engaged deeper into the asteroid chains. The 3-point compression tactic, the final embrace, had been designed assuming the prey would panic and attempt to break formation. The human carrier was not attempting to break formation. It was moving through the compression as if walking down a corridor it had traversed before. Kessax felt the cold in his chest deepen. All surviving ships concentrate fire on the carrier, he ordered. Target the shield generator cluster. I want that ship crippled, now. 4 Virath vessels aimed all remaining weaponry at the weakening point in the human carrier's defenses. The shields dropped to 14%. The human carrier was still moving. Thex looked at the display. The energy levels were approaching critical. The shields were seconds from collapse. The hull was taking damage now. Small breaches on the upper deck. Fires spreading. The real weight of battle finally landing on the ship itself. Vyers, Thex said. Options. Gap forming, Vyers replied. Starboard rear. As Virath concentration tightens, their formation compresses in on itself, exploitable in 23 seconds. Thex nodded. Hold course, she said. Be ready to execute. The human carrier held its approach vector. The shields continued to absorb fire. Damages accumulated. Fire spread on the upper deck. Damage control teams moved through the ship. No panic. No hesitation. The crew had trained for this. The gap appeared. Execute, Thex said. The human carrier veered hard into the gap between 2 of the 4 remaining Virath ships. 3 seconds of hard acceleration. 3 seconds vulnerable. Perfect target. The carrier's rear weapons released a full discharge. Close range. Devastating. A Virath mid-range vessel came apart. Only 3 Virath ships now carried any combat capability. Kessax gripped the console edge so hard that the metal began to bend under the pressure of his hands. For the first time, he did not know what to do. What kind of crew finishes breakfast when facing 9 warships? Stay close. Their answer rewrites what an empire understands about power. Kessax ordered retaliation. 3 remaining Virath ships opened fire again. The human carrier's shields were already failing. The final assault brought them down completely. The shields collapsed. The hull was exposed. But the carrier was not attempting to shield anymore. It was advancing. It was turning. It was bringing its remaining firepower to bear on the second mid-range vessel, the one that had lost weapon capability but maintained propulsion and armor. Point-blank range discharge. The second Virath mid-range vessel exploded. Now only 2 Virath ships remained that could fight. One was the Dominion's Vanguard. The other was a light attack ship commanded by a pilot who had been promoted to that position 6 months ago. A pilot who had no experience making decisions in a battle where the enemy was still moving after all conventional tactics had failed. Kessax's hands released from the console. They were shaking. Analyst Vyers had tried to tell him. In humans, extreme stress causes focus, not confusion. They have 7,000 years of warfare history. They expect to take damage. They expect to lose battles, and they continue fighting anyway. Kessax had not believed her. The human carrier held position in the center of the passage. Its shields were gone. Its hull was scarred. Fires burned on multiple decks. It had taken damage that would have crippled any Virath vessel of equivalent size. It continued to operate. Kessax opened a direct channel to the human captain. He did not use 17 languages. He used the common frequency that all spacefaring species monitored. "What are you?" he asked. The response came back. Captain Thex's voice was steady. It carried no anger. It carried no triumph. It was simply a statement of fact. "We're the ones who didn't surrender," she said. The bridge of the Dominion's vanguard went silent. Every crew member was still at their station. No one moved. No one spoke. In that silence, understanding was beginning to arrive. For 300 years, the final embrace had succeeded, against 8 different species. 0 failures. Every encounter had followed the pattern: encirclement, demand, surrender or destruction. In every single case, the prey had chosen surrender. Because prey that was aware of being prey did not fight prey fights. But the humans were not fighting a prey fight. They were fighting a ship fight, a crew fight, a prepared, calculated, rehearsed fight where they expected to take damage and had built themselves, both the ship and the crew, to continue after that damage arrived. They had not assumed they would win. They had assumed they would lose and prepared to fight anyway. The Virath had no category for that. Kessax stood at the tactical console of the Dominion's vanguard and felt, for the first time in his life, what it meant to understand that he had been wrong about something fundamental. He had known he was wrong before the moment arrived to do anything about it. The human carrier was still moving. The 2 Virath ships remaining were still in combat. The passage was still the same narrow corridor between asteroid chains where so many other species had died. But everything had changed. Kessax turned to Vathan. His voice was still controlled. The control was still being used for a different purpose now. "Order the light attack vessel to break formation and retreat," Kessax said. Vathan stared at him. "High Warlord." "Tell them to go home," Kessax said. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the final embrace has failed. Tell them that our doctrine died today." Kessax turned back to the tactical display. His 4 eyes were fixed on the human carrier. The carrier was closer now. The flagship and the carrier were both locked into vectors that would not allow evasion. The corridor was too narrow. The geometry was too precise. The momentum was too committed. Kessax reached for the intercom that connected to the propulsion section. "Full thrust," he said. "Direct vector. The human ship will not leave this passage." His order meant one thing: ramming speed. A last act of a warlord who had learned too late that dignity was all that remained. The Dominion's vanguard lurched. Full thrust, direct vector. The flagship's engines pushed everything they had into forward motion. 300 meters of warship, all of it committed. Kessax did not look away from the tactical display. He watched the numbers counting down. Distance to human carrier, 1,400 meters, 1,200, 1,000. Vyers spoke to Thex. Ramming trajectory confirmed. Impact in 41 seconds. Thex looked at the display. The flagship's speed. The vector. The narrow corridor walls leaving no room for the carrier to evade without tearing its hull across the asteroid chain. The math was clean. The situation was clear. She picked up her coffee cup, put it back down. "Take the shot," she said. No hesitation in her voice. No ceremony. The same tone she used when she ordered repairs or course corrections. The situation called for a decision and she made it. That was the job. Vyers fired. No mercy, no retreat, no surrender. The shot struck the Dominion's vanguard at the main fuel coupling. The coupling connected the primary and secondary propulsion systems. Without it, the chain reaction was inevitable. The fuel lines ruptured outward. The power cores lost containment. The detonation spread from the engine block forward in a cascade that took 6 seconds from first contact to total structural failure. The Vyrath flagship came apart at 400 meters. Debris spread across the full width of the Malcresh passage. Panels, hull plates, burning fragments of everything that had been certain and inevitable 47 minutes ago. The geometry of the final embrace had collapsed into scattered wreckage, moving slowly through a corridor that had never seen this outcome before. On the bridge of the Vanguard's shadow, no one spoke. Petra Yest at the comm station had been recording since the engagement began. She did not stop recording now. Tears ran down her face. She did not wipe them. She did not move from her station. Thex sat back in her chair. Her tactical officer Finch closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. They opened again. "Damage report," Thex said. Vyers responded. "Shields non-functional. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9. Dorsal antenna array destroyed. Starboard maneuvering thrusters at 40%. Propulsion at 82%. Fires on upper deck. Damage control teams are managing." The carrier was intact. It was operational, it was crewed. 2 Vyrath vessels still drifting, Vyers added. 1 mid-class and 1 light attack, both disabled, hulls intact, life support active. The light attack vessel appears to have executed its withdrawal order before the flagship's final engagement. It is currently at the passage entrance, stopped, waiting. Thex looked at the display for a moment. "Get Ray started on repairs," she said, "and someone make fresh coffee. We're going to be here a while." The 2 disabled Vyrath ships drifted in the debris field. Weapons inactive, engines cold, life support running on reserve power. The crews inside were alive. Some were injured. The hull breaches in the mid-class vessel had been sealed by emergency systems, but 3 sections remained without full pressure. The bridge of the light attack ship had taken a direct strike. Its young commander was coordinating from the secondary station. Thex looked at the scan. Finch said nothing. He had learned in 3 years serving under Thex that there were moments when she was not deciding whether to act. She was deciding how. "Prep repair shuttles," Thex said. "Medical team full kit, not weapons." Finch looked at her then. She met his eyes. "They ambushed us," Thex said. "They're still people. Patch them up and send them home." The shuttles launched. Human medical teams floated across the debris field between the damaged carrier and the 2 drifting Vyrath vessels. The distance was not far. The work was careful. The Vyrath crews, some wounded, all in shock, watched human medics approach through their viewports. 1 young Vyrath male, his left arm sealed with emergency biofoam from a hull breach, was sitting against the wall of the mid-class vessel's cargo hold when the first human came through the airlock. He was 23 years old. He had enlisted with certainty. He had trained with certainty. He had expected this engagement to last 15 minutes. The human medic was a woman. She was carrying a field kit and had blood on her sleeve from the carrier's own wounded. She looked at the Vyrath male and said something in Keth, the secondary language most Vyrath learned as children. She said, "This will sting a little." The Vyrath male did not smile. His biology did not smile, but his 4 eyes tracked her face as she worked on his arm. The rigidity that had been in his posture since the first shot fired began, slowly, to ease. The medical teams worked for 2 hours. 6 days later, the disabled Vyrath vessels drifted to the edge of the Malcresh passage under tow from a civilian rescue ship, responding to the automated distress signals. 8 days later, the stories reached Vyrath High Command. 1 carrier, 9 warships, 47 minutes. The Vyrath High Command did not release a statement. Statements required certainty. They had no certainty left to distribute. In a lower-level office in the Intelligence Division, Analyst Vyers received a message. Not a formal communication. a handwritten note on actual physical paper, which was used by senior Virath commanders only when they wanted the words to cost something. The note said, "You were right." That was all. Vire sat with the message on her desk. The new office was larger. The budget increase that followed was 12 times her previous allocation. New staff had been assigned, new equipment, new authority to reclassify threat assessments without senior approval. She sat and looked at the note for a long time. Being right had cost more than being ignored. She had been ignored and had gone home and slept. She had been right, and somewhere in a debris field in the Malcresh Passage, a warlord who had not listened was dead. She filed the note and went back to work. Word moved through informal channels faster than any official report. In the diplomatic sector, a Velhari diplomat named Ishval was meeting with her counterparts when someone mentioned the Malcresh engagement. Ishval had been in diplomatic service for 22 years. She was careful with language. She chose her next words with that care. "Humans ambushed 9 warships," Ishval said, and then filed a report and gave medical aid to the survivors. She paused. "What does that tell you about how they approach tomorrow?" No one answered immediately. No one needed to. 3 species recalled their survey ships from human space within 7 days. Not in hostility, not in fear exactly, in reassessment, a reevaluation of what category the humans belonged to, because the categories that existed before the Malcresh Passage no longer seemed adequate. Post-contact diplomacy, which had been moving in one direction for the past 6 years, paused, then began moving in another. On day 71, the Vanguard's shadow returned to Frontier Station. It came in on standard approach. No escort, no ceremony, no broadcast. The hull showed the work of the engagement panels replaced in mismatched alloys where the originals had burned away, a temporary antenna structure welded to the dorsal frame, scoring marks along the starboard side that the repair teams had not fully addressed yet. The damage was visible. The ship had taken the engagement and continued. Fleet Admiral Wren met Thex at the dock. He offered her a promotion, Admiral Fleet Command, a larger chair. Thex thanked him. "I prefer the ship," she said. Wren nodded. It was not a surprised nod. Petra Yest walked off the bridge carrying her data pad carefully, the way a person carries something they are afraid of dropping. The recording was still on it. She had been asked 3 times whether she would submit it to the official record. Each time she had said, "I will, after I make a backup copy." She made the copy. The bridge of the Vanguard's shadow was quiet. The crew had rotated out. Repairs were ongoing through the hull. The sounds of work were everywhere: cutting tools, welding equipment, boots on metal floors, voices coordinating through the intercom. Normal sounds. The sound of a ship returning to its regular shape. Thex sat in the command chair. She reached for the ceramic cup on the armrest. The fracture on the handle was the same one it had always been, chipped from an impact during a previous engagement that she did not talk about. The rim was still coffee-stained in the way that meant it had never been replaced, only washed. She refilled it. Sat back. Some victories taste like survival, some taste like coffee. She held the cup and looked at the forward viewport and did not speak. Vyers updated the ship's log. Timestamp coordinates, outcome, damage sustained and repaired, 2 disabled Virath vessels released, crew status nominal. The log entry closed. All threats neutralized, all debts paid, resuming original heading, no further action required. Outside the station windows, stars held their positions, cold and steady and vast, unchanged by the small, brief, remarkable things that happened between them. Moving at their own pace through their own enormous business, indifferent to what species learned about themselves in a narrow corridor 8 light-years from the nearest transit point. The ship waited. Patient, ready for the next patrol.